changed with the Washington Commanders since the beginning of the year, and I'd say a lot has. Currently holding the second overall pick. That could change, though. It is Friday, the 5th of January, so Week 18 hasn't happened. There's so many teams at 4-12 and 5-11, so theoretically they could be, I think, as low as maybe like 5 or 6. Their strength of schedule is pretty low, so if they tie some of those 5-win teams, I think they would be above them. But that's assuming that 4 or 5 really bad teams win, so probably not going to happen. They're probably going to be in the top 5 at worst, I'd say. Brian, Washington Commanders, what's your thoughts with them? Kind of a weird team, I'd say, this year. They feel better than 4-12, but they also don't feel good,
Yeah, they're honestly, for the last several years, they've felt like a weird team to me. Like, I think it was like about 3 years ago when they drafted Chase Young, and like their defense just looked so good. And then I think was that 3 years ago, or was that 2?
That was 2020, I think, because they were the only team that like made Tom Brady struggle in that playoffs when they won the Super Bowl. It was like, damn, is he going to lose to Heineke and the Commanders?
Yeah, and then the next year their defense just looked like trash, and nothing had really changed either, which was just weird. Like, so yeah, they've just been kind of a weird, like, kind of up and down team, and like obviously like they're in a super tough division now with the Cowboys and the Eagles both like showing they're basically like elite. So it's pretty tough for them to win a wild card spot, I'd say, for like the next couple of years if those guys keep playing the way they have. So I'd say, very much a mixed bag.
Yeah, this team's going to go through a lot of changes. We mentioned it. They have the second overall pick. You mentioned it right before we started. Currently 3 picks in the top 41 and 4 in the top 70. They have the most cap space in the NFL with $85 million, so they're going to be spending a bunch of money. Their head coach, Ron Rivera, is probably going to be gone, so a new coach is going to come in. Some significant free agents. Jacoby Brissett's going to be a free agent. I think he's a hold for the most part. If he lands as a bridge quarterback or a QB2, there's going to be value with him. Antonio Gibson, we'll get to him in a little bit, but he's a free agent. Curtis Samuel is the biggest name at receiver that's a free agent. So I think the Commanders, obviously, it starts with Sam Howell, who had a meteoric rise as a quarterback this year, all the way to QB 15. His highest was QB 13. And that's from, being like QB 30 before the year. And he's fallen all the way down to QB 25. What are we doing to Sam Howell? Because, again, if this team's picking in the top 3 or 4, they're getting a quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's a tough one because I don't know why they decided to get away from him in the last few weeks. Maybe they had playoff aspirations. But I was kind of surprised like when they benched him because I thought he was playing relatively well. Obviously, like he was throwing it a ton, which was nice to see that they were actually trusting him to throw it 40 times a game, for, 75% of the games he played basically, or more than that. So it was just kind of weird, I think, but I agree. Like if they do have a high pick, they probably are going after another quarterback, but I don't think I'm selling Sam Howell for anything less than a late first. Like I don't even think an early second. I think I'd rather just hold him. Like I don't know if he's going to play this next year. It doesn't look good. That's obviously the kind of the consensus right now, but maybe that's sunk cost fallacy, I guess. As far as like you thought you had something and now it's gone, and so now you want it to go back up before you sell. But I don't get it. He's a weird one for sure.
Yeah, it's a good case of maybe selling at the highest point. Again, fifth round draft pick, and that's what makes it so easy for them to move on. If this was Trevor Lawrence's first year or second year even, people would be like, holy crap, look at all the potential. Now that it's Sam Howell, it's like, we'll move on. We have nothing to invest. And it's a new coaching staff. Like, makes me nervous. I kind of agree with you though. Like maybe an early second. I just based on the fact that I think this team's going to finish with a top 3 pick, and I don't know what Sam Howell could be a backup for the next 2 years. So I would maybe think about an early second, but yeah, it's so hard. He's only 4 quarterbacks had more top 12 finishes this year than Sam Howell. It was Hurts, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, and then Brock Purdy and Sam Howell are tied with 9 top 12 finishes, QB finishes. So such a weird season, but he just tanked at the end. Like he was so bad, and he was getting sacked all year. He had some bad interception games, stuff that I mentioned during the season. Like this is maybe a case of like fantasy values not equating to a real quarterback value, Yeah, he's a tough one for sure. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the sacks. Like, did he end up getting like the record of like the most sacked quarterback in a single season?
No, I think it kind of got better there at the end.
Yeah, because he only got sacked 1 time each in the last 3 games, but which was kind of weird because he played, the Jets and San Francisco, and I don't know how good the Rams defense was. I feel like they were kind of middle of the pack, but yeah, I just feel like if he could have a little bit more time, like they have a lot of talent on their roster in general, and so it seems like maybe, I don't know, what if they trade back and get a little more draft capital and really try and build up that line? And like, I feel like the receivers are good, even though we didn't really see that. We'll get into them in a second, but they have a decent run game, even though that's going to change too. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's such a weird team.
It is. Yeah, I don't see them not taking a quarterback, especially if they have the choice of the second best, or even the number 1 quarterback. If Chicago goes with Marvin Harrison at the number 1 pick. So yeah, I just can't see them passing up a chance of getting one of these, because these 3 quarterbacks are all really close to each other too, in terms of like how good they are. And Jaden Daniels and Drake May and Caleb Williams. So I think a lot will depend on. I think they're going to lose this game to the Cowboys, so I don't think they're going to change much their draft position. I put it backwards on the document, but we'll start with the running backs. Brian Robinson, Chris Rodriguez Jr., who we saw score like a couple touchdowns at the end there. They're not really running backs I really want to hold on to, especially with the coaching change coming. I'm not going to sell them for nothing, but like I'll get out of them easily. Either one. Well, I'd get out of Brian Robinson for any second round pick, to be honest. I know he was pretty good there for a little bit, but just not someone I necessarily want to hold on to this offseason if I can get any type of value for him. Where are you at with B-Rob?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough because like he didn't finish. I see him as RB21, and that's even with missing a couple of games. And like you said, he did start off really well. We saw some involvement in the passing game, which we didn't really think we were going to see much of that, but it's not anywhere near consistency. Over half his games were basically like 2 or less targets, not even catches. So a few explosive target games kind of thing, which might kind of like pad the stats a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think I'd get rid of him for any second. But then again, like I think he was like a 3rd round rookie draft ish like type of guy. Mm-hmm. So I think that if you're upgrading, or I guess what you were kind of saying, like let's say if you're getting a late second for him, that's probably not too far off from where he was drafted. Maybe a bit. So maybe you are still like gaining some value and doing the re-roll, as like you like to call it, with a little bit of value added. But maybe, I mean, if you're getting a second for him, it's like I think you should be able to squeeze a 3rd at least also, which isn't saying a whole lot, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like an early second, I'd probably just do it.
Yeah, that's actually right where keep trade cut so the community has them is basically equivalent to a early 2024 second. So that's fair. I'm always worried about coaching change. Like look at Dameon Pierce. Like look at what he was in his rookie year and how high he got as a he's probably a top 15 dynasty running back, and a new coaching staff comes in, doesn't fit their scheme, and he's nothing now. Like that could be Brian Robinson easily. So that's the biggest worry. If it was still the same system, I'd be okay with keeping him, for a late set, not trading him for a late second or something. So, Antonio Gibson it's hard to talk about him. It really depends on where he goes. Like he could be a sneaky, like if I can get him for a late third, it's just speculating. Like what if he gets to a really good situation, like where they're going to actually use him properly. Like, I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but like just a team that's going to use him. Like what if he goes to the Chargers as their pass catching back and Eckler's gone? Like, I don't know, just jumping the gun a little bit and just speculating on what if he gets into a better situation. I'm fine with definitely. What would you buy Gibson for at this point?
Yeah, I would definitely buy him for a third, even probably an early third. I know. Well, I don't know. It's so tough with the running backs, and he is kind of one of those players. Like he's always been kind of tough because, like he was a converted wide receiver, so it's like, oh, he's going to catch so many passes, and he's got over 40 catches every season, including this one of his career. So it's like, yeah, he can do that. Why do I see him as a rookie in 2020, but with no stats? Maybe it's just what I'm looking at. But
yeah, that's weird. No, that was one of his better years.
Yeah, well, yeah. I see 2021. He started like he finished as RB11. Obviously, like he had like a kind of a heavier workload, like a lot more rush attempts in that year.
RB14 in standard in 2020, RB12 in half PPR in 2020.
Yeah, so yeah, like he definitely holds some value, but I think you could probably get him on the cheap. So yeah, if you could get him for probably any third round pick, I probably just would do that just to speculate. But it just depends on where he goes. You're right, but you kind of have to shoot your shot now, because if he does go to like the Chargers, you're not getting him for a third round pick.
Exactly. Yeah. And even as like him as a throw in with another, like if people value, like just think about if you traded, and I can't really think of someone, but like RB20 going into 2023, you traded RB20 for a second round pick and Mostert or something, or like a second round pick and Kyron Williams, so if he can be as like a throw in to like you're trading maybe RB25 right now, or like if someone wants Joe Mixon, you trade Joe Mixon for Gibson in a second, like, as a throw-in kind of piece, at least according to from the other person's point of view. Like I think that's a good move for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
And he could be good player. Yeah, and Chris Rodriguez Jr. is just, he should be rostered, but you got to kind of wait and see. Receivers, it's McLaurin and Dotson. Samuel's a free agent. He had a good year, flashed at times, but is that really going to be repeatable at this point? So it's McLaurin and Dotson are the main guys to talk about. Where is McLaurin on the wide receiver rankings, and where did he even finish? So he's wide receiver 35, according to Keep Trade Cut, and he finishes wide receiver 21. I don't know. I hear wide receiver 35, and it kind of makes me a little interested in buying that.
I see wide receiver 31.
For fantasy finish? Yeah. Oh, I'm looking at 2020. Yeah. Okay. So you're probably right. Okay. So yeah. So he definitely started off a lot better, but we saw his potential when Brissett came in for like the 6 drives, and it was just like, holy crap. I don't know. I hear wide receiver 35 on Keep Trade Cut, and I'm interested in potentially buying that. Like if someone values George Pickens way more than McLaurin, which is what it's looking like, George Pickens wide receiver 26, and I can get something on top and get McLaurin and something for Pickens, I'd do that in like a heartbeat,
Yeah, I definitely would too. Like because I mean there's both huge question marks for both those receivers in terms of quarterback, but like we've seen, like he's never even finished, like even this year, if he, wide receiver 31 was his worst year. And he's been a solid like wide receiver 2-ish, with some upside. That's not exactly correct, because I see wide receiver 25 and 27 in 2 of his years, but wide receiver 14 last year. So like we know, like McLaurin's a good player. We want to see him utilized a little more, which is not anything you should expect, especially if he stays on Washington, because we haven't seen that, but we know, or at least I feel that he's a really good player in general. And he's a solid, like I would say, like low end RB2. Like if I could get him for a late second, I would totally do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And just think about if they do draft a quarterback and that quarterback has a CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert like season, McLaurin's going to freaking feast, like he's going to be the Nico Collins this year, like that's going to jump back up. So yeah, I think a little bit of an undervalue there.
It's so weird though, because Sam Howell had like 600 pass attempts, and that's not including even the other, the other quarterbacks that started, and it's still like it's not like he was hyper targeted or anything like that. Like I think like him and just like throughout his whole career, he's never been necessarily like the number one, like overall, or sorry, not overall, but like on his team. Like he's kind of like the 1A though. I would say. Yeah. One thing to note, he is a lot older than you would think. He's going to be 29 basically to start the year next year. And he's only, been in the league for 5 years. That would be his 6th year. So he came in at 24. So he is a little bit older than normal when guys are beginning. He already has his second contract, but yeah, I think he could still be good for a couple years for sure. At least 2-3 years. And then Dotson, is he kind of in that similar boat, like buy low? Cause he's all the way down to wide receiver 42. And assuming they get a rookie quarterback and maybe he's really good, like new offensive system, and then they funnel everything between these two receivers. They probably don't go receiver. I don't know. Maybe they draft a receiver, but I don't think it's a high priority with these two guys. So where are you at with Dotson? Is he another potential buy low? Yeah, I would put my feelers out for him. I don't know. I think he's basically in that same category. It could really bite you for sure if you gave up a late second for Dotson, but just think about where he was going. Did you say like where he fell from going into the season? Because I feel like he had a pretty dramatic fall.
Yeah, he was wide receiver 18 at one point. It was his highest ever.
Yeah, so I think if you're buying him now, you're buying the dip, 18 down to 42, like in the span of basically maybe 1.5 seasons. Oh no, that's actually just one season, huh?
Yeah.
I'm not clicking on and everything. But yeah, no, I think that's good. Like you're like this could be like the lowest he's ever valued, like just given like we've seen flashes from him, not so much this year. There's a lot of like bad metrics like regarding him this year, but like we said, like this team is just so weird. Like, so yeah, I think I'd give up a late second for him, but I would try and get him for like 2/3 first, or even 1/3, depending on where that manager feels like he's valued, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and he's even, for whatever reason, coming into even though he was a first round pick, I don't know if this is the Washington effect. People didn't value him as much. Like Christian Watson was 5 spots higher than him after they were both drafted. Christian Watson was a second round pick. Packers, Aaron Rodgers, like blah 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 type of thing. Like people just weren't as hyped about Dotson from the get go. So I definitely think you can, put some feelers out there for him and potentially buy him, or as a throw-in piece as well.
Yeah. Now that I put him in the calculator, like I'm just kind of using this as like gospel, not necessarily where I feel, but this is kind of like the market value. But he's slightly valued more than a late second. So you're not getting him for a single second, but if you can get him for 2/3, do it.
Yeah. And I don't think there's really anything else to talk about. I mean, Logan Thomas, I don't really need to talk about him too much. Like,
I don't think so.
So, yeah. Any last words on the Commanders?
No, I don't think so. I think we've talked about them enough. Hopefully, I really hope they get better. Let's just leave it at that, I guess. And honestly, I hope that they keep Sam Howell. Like, I kind of agree with you. Like, I don't think that's very likely, but I would like to see him. I mean, this is basically his rookie season. He only started one game last year. And they should try and I don't know. It's so tough, man. Like I said, like I would like to see them trade back a little bit, try and get a little more draft capital and kind of like build this team, because I don't think Sam Howell is the problem necessarily, but yeah, we'll see.
Yep, we will see. It'll be interesting. So, as always, like and subscribe. And our next team is the New York Jets. And we will catch you guys in that video.